All right. What's going on, Macro Perspective peeps? Got another great episode. I actually want to say welcome to a good friend, Joey Belizario. We've met in the last few years with the love around, first off, our friends and our love around fitness, because we met at a bodybuilding show supporting one of our great friends through my fiance and everything like that. And every time we connect, it's always about life and around an active lifestyle and all these things. But today I wanted to bring Joey on just for a few reasons. I mean, he's got an extensive background in the kines world, in the exercise science, the health and wellness. He manages Equinox here in Southern California. I think a few other locations in his upbringing in that area. But I'll let Joey kind of get into it. But Joey, the conversation we wanted to have today was kind of talk about your experience in Equinox, how you've gotten up there, your doctorate, right? Your doctorate in kines, and then just some new cool things coming out from the Equinox world. So would you mind just giving us the snapshot photo of that, and we'll kind of delve into the conversation naturally as we can.
No, of course. First, I just want to say I appreciate you guys for getting me on this podcast. This is my first, so my hope is that everything that I share is informative and something that's valuable for anyone listening. But of course, Equinox for me, I have not really been at Equinox for too long. I'm a post-pandemic coach, meaning that things were definitely ran, not differently, but it was definitely more intensive as we navigate the post-pandemic world. But I've been at Equinox for 3 years. I started as a coach. Funny enough, currently I'm at Equinox Huntington Beach, which is where I saw my first coach walk out of there, which enticed me to actually join Equinox. So to be able to be back at Huntington Beach is like full circle for me. But I started off as a coach. I think with a lot of things, it's all about timing. So right place, right time. I was lucky enough to be in a position where the business was rebuilding, and it allowed me the opportunity to get into management a lot faster than you would usually see. For a lot of coaches that go through that process, because internal candidacy is something that they often push. So I started at Equinox Sports Club Orange County down here in Irvine, California. Amazing club, amazing coaches, and just really built myself, my business there. And of course, my experience being able to lead in a different capacity. So that eventually led me to an opening down in Equinox Santa Monica, where I was for the next couple years before now, after having our first kid, have an opportunity to move back closer to home, closer to family, and lead from the front here at Equinox Huntington Beach. But yeah, that's a short snippet of what my Equinox journey has been so far. I'm sure there's a lot more things that are involved within that journey that we can dive into a little bit more, but that's been my experience at Equinox so far.
Marcos,
so you managed the Huntington location, or one of the managers? How does that work? Is there multiple people there in that managerial role?
Yeah, so obviously there's different departments within each club. As far as the personal training department, we have 2 managers that run the team. So depending on the size of the club, it can be as low as 15 to 20 or as high as 30 to 40, upwards of 50 pre-pandemic, which they are navigating themselves back into. My role specifically right now is the most common. You see this in many other commercial gym settings, the personal training manager who operates the business or has the focus of building the business and sustaining it. And then, of course, my co-manager is, we call the PT Programming and Development Manager, which is where I started, where your main focus is developing the new coaches that come on board and helping them navigate how to become a coach based off of our standard, and of course, how to be a coach more than just knowing your stuff, but what coaching really entails. Some things that we probably have learned, or anyone that's listening that has gone through precision nutrition, the view of a coach is entirely different than just knowing how to program. A lot of that is, of course, tailored to how to communicate and all of those things.
Oh yeah, the soft skills, if you will, the interpersonal skills that, like, 21-year-old with no life experience, when I got started, I felt like a imposter. It's like, oh, how am I supposed to tell this 40-year-old dude how to eat some chicken and rice, or whatever that's going to fit the macros at the time? And then how it's evolved into, like, quote unquote, like my coaching standard of today, which I think everybody has their own kind of unique nuance to it, right? Like you want to do you guys kind of encourage some like individual flair, or is it like these people are kind of by a particular book? I mean, you mentioned you're more on the business side, but like for your co-manager, is that kind of, are there certain boxes they have to check? Are there ones that are a little more quote unquote fluid? How's that look?
Yeah, I would say it's more fluid. There's obviously a brand standard of how we conduct our business, but I actually stole this from UCLA strength and conditioning coach. I like to use the term no rules, high standards. So you have a standard put into place. How you get there is how you want to get there, because obviously when you think about a team, and both of you have been into experience hiring new coaches, you do want to look for those that add value. And oftentimes what that means is something that's uniquely different than everyone else that you currently have. So when we think about the it factor, who the coach that you want to bring on the team, you want to be able to leverage their strengths. Not just because you don't think that their weaknesses can be built or the areas of opportunities can be built, but more so because their strengths are what made them different. And that skill set, particularly, may be the skill set that some members are looking for, but they have yet found until that coach came along. So there's definitely a unique flair to how you want to conduct your coaching style. But then, of course, we just know that oftentimes when it comes to members or ourselves wanting a coach, it does come down to preferences. So we have to be able to tailor them to their specific preference.
What makes a good coach for you?
What makes a good coach for me? That's great. That's actually a great question. I would say I learned this earlier on at Equinox. Oftentimes we tend to operate with the gold standard. So the gold standard is to do unto others how you would want done to you. And a manager introduced this, I don't know if it's a common phrase, but the platinum standard, which is to do unto others how they would want to have done to them. So that this idea of being a coach or being a guide is something that we've learned in PN or precision nutrition, but being able to be that coach that helps navigate your clients' decisions to get them to where they want to go. So we have that overarching outcome that we want, especially here in Equinox, is to maximize their potential, or that quote unquote life maximization. So how does that look like? Or what does that journey look like for them? And what role do we have to get them there? So for coaching, is definitely more servant based, understanding that you're there to serve them, and their preferences, values, and expectations, kind of goes in line to that whole science-based profession, and then just floating in that space.
Boom. All right, I love it. First 8 minutes, and we already knocked out the freaking like thumbnail clip like that. We guaranteed that was beautiful.
Guaranteed.
Dude. Like,
that was what makes a good coach. I love
the
that.
platinum standard though, like that's a good one. I like how like take it to like the next level, because we do have that, and then like you just said, being more on like the guide front, which I think like you'd mentioned PN, they really push that heavy in their like their L2 more than anything, where it's more about like the psychological component, because coaching the X's and O's is like, again, kind of, I mean, it's not basic. I mean, it's necessary, but obviously like having, like you said, the guide, like coaches are the guide, and we're going to create a plan at first, and it's going to totally be molded and adapted to the individual. And I don't know, yeah, I like that. I like how you phrased it. I feel like that's probably what I would look at too. Obviously there's a gentleman right now that I follow for a number of years, and his arc of himself is also kind of what I admire. And then I also see how he coaches people, very admirable as well. And kind of the same thing. It's like, I want that guy to probably do that on me. I might like have when I don't have 2 kids that I'm paying for outside activities for, I'll put some money for myself.
I love that. Joey, I wanted to kind of steer the conversation. We're talking about like educational, right? Talking about precision nutrition. I want to get to that as well, but I want to get to your educational background, because man, it's an interesting, very unique background, because people get like their bachelor's in kines, maybe a master's in exercise science, but you have a PhD, correct?
Yes, and up and coming. I wouldn't consider myself having it yet, and I am on the brink of being considered a candidate. But yes, 3 years in, a couple years left. So it's
what does that entail? Like to get like a PhD in kinesis, what is that? What has that journey looked like for you? What did you study? Do you have to do a study like in that? Like you have to do like a research, or like what does it take to be a candidate or propose this?
Yeah, I would say it's all encompassing. It's very similar to an undergrad or a grad. You have specific coursework that is, by definition, the title is advanced, and you kind of see this as you go from undergrad to grad. You just take sports nutrition, and then all of a sudden it's advanced sports nutrition. It just had a little bit more depth to it. But I actually was explaining this to another coach about what it really entails. We know that when we go through our undergrad, you're just learning accumulation of a lot of things. And by the time you get to your last 2 years, you're really trying to hone into the one thing that you really want to specialize in. So I know for myself, when I went through my undergrad, that was sports medicine. I knew I wanted to do something, or at that time, I thought I wanted to do something within that field, whether that just meant being an AT, athletic trainer, or that meant being a physical therapist. So that was my specialty. Once I got to grad school for kines, it then becomes a little bit more specialized to where you, at this point, you should have a base knowledge and understanding of a lot of things related to that science. And now it's your opportunity to now start juggling the research. So you are taking the most current available evidence, and as you are going through certain topics, you are more or less choosing a side that you want to defend, and then providing some support as to why that may be. Because at this point, you uh, understand the science, but now you just want to see what it looks like practically. And that's
Yeah.
the shift when it comes to research. It has gone from, we were saying X's and O's, and now if we put real time application with actual people involved, how does that change?
Yeah.
What's uniquely different when you shift to the doctorate is that now you're trying to either come up with something new based off of the research that's already present, and or add something to what is already known. So I was telling one of the coaches that it's actually gets a lot easier because you are now playing in this gray space where it's not like, let's say it's not, if we're thinking about something anatomy, it's not name the bone or name the muscle. It is, and or when you get to grad school, it is not how does this or what does this look like in the context of movement.
Yeah.
Now it's all right, we've done the movement. How does it change when we implement a new variable?
Mm.
So it's a little bit more explorative.
Yeah.
So there's a more of this open ended sense where it actually gets a little bit easier.
Get a little more creative, a little more
Yeah, because
fun.
at this point,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say we're starting to see this now in social media when it comes to research or literature journal. There's, of course, a lot of these individuals coming out being science based. Now we're being more familiar with research or just literature journals. You see people cite things a lot more often. I think
Yeah.
as you build through undergrad to grad, you get to a point where you get to understand how to read it a little bit more effectively.
Yeah.
But now you're just looking at the methods. So whether it could be reliable or valid. And that's what you're doing within doctorate. Cool. Now you're going to decipher amongst all the things they've used as support and pick it apart and identify whether or not it was actually
Yeah.
good evidence for your either argument or whatever it may be.
Yeah. I'm curious, for you, do you look, for you personally, I don't know what you're gonna, I don't want to put into the ether like what you're gonna do, because I think you're supposed to keep that close to the chest until you defend it, right? So keep that close to the chest. But for you personally, what do you like to study in terms of like these studies? You like looking at more like physiological exercise phys, or like biomechanics for your studies? Like what interests you more so, and what do you think translates more so to like your day-to-day life, probably?
That's a good question. Yeah, I've always looked at, well, ever since being in Equinox, I've always, well, not always, it's kind of shifted to where I would want to do something that's a little bit more practical. So that once there is some general understanding, we can start using it, right? I would say, although it is a little bit overplayed, this whole thing with the long muscle lengths has become a thing, and all of a sudden you just start applying it, and then of course there's things that discredit whatever it may be. But it's cool to be able to look into something that could be a little bit more practical, so that you can start applying it right away. I would love to look into biomechanics. I mean, you mentioned this before, and that's such a unique, interesting area to dive into because it's just not touched on. But right now, I'm kind of leaning towards either. I'm gonna have three things. I'll just bring up just broadly when it comes to programming, what it looks like for frequency or volume, identifying what would be most effective in that area. Two, because of my background with running, it'll definitely be a little bit related to the physiology of aerobic endurance, whether you could substitute, I'm just going to use this broadly, whether you could substitute long steady state duration for, let's say, high repetition training. So, for example, oftentimes you can tax the oxidative muscle fibers by doing that way, and whether you could just change the program in that way. And then number three, of course, this is just more performance metric based, but looking into how well machine-based equipment matches with free moving equipment and developing the metrics of power, strength, and speed. So it'd be cool to look in those areas because if you really dive into these things, like stability is very, there's a lot of things that are related to what stability looks like. There's a camp that suggests that you actually gain the most stability just sticking to a machine-based equipment because it allows you to produce more force in that movement. But then, of course, there's that other end of what the stabilizer muscle disorder may be, what those muscles do when you're actually doing a free-moving implement, whether that be open or closed chain. So it'd be cool to see what that looks like and theoretically, potentially be able to have someone increase their, let's say, broad jump or vertical jump, just doing leg press, but just changing the modality of how you work with the intensity and volume and such.
Oh man,
Shit.
there's a lot to that.
Shit, that's not, I'm over here like my nerd brain, like that's not. I can't wait to read that.
Yeah, and I've heard that there's a far less research in more of like the A&P and the exercise science kind of components than there is even in like nutrition. So like even something as simple as like you just mentioned, like the transfer of force from like a machine over to something that is practical. Like I don't know if a study like that even exists, and obviously that's why you brought it up, right? Like you would think that we would have done it, but I think there's also a lot of other confounding variables that could be contributing to an athlete's potential vertical increase outside of just like them doing like you're just doing leg press, like that's your only thing, right? Like, and you have to like kind of just show like and literally get people that would be willing to be a participant in that would be pretty wild, right? Because you're like, the only thing I'm doing for my quads is to freaking narrow or toes pointed out or whatever the little nuances of that protocol is. And I think that's kind of crazy. It seems so obvious, like duh, like why hasn't someone done that? But like it also costs money to do a study. So yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, it's very interesting to really think about how long resistance training has been a thing. It really hasn't been a thing for that long. When you think about
kinesiology, I mean, it's so funny. I mean, I remember like the history of kinesiology as a field, like one of those intro classes you learn in your undergrad, and they're like, exercise as a term, kinesiology was just around in like the 40s or something. So it's not even like 100 years old yet. While chemistry, all these other things have been around for ages, and this is just this like new kid on the block. But apparently, it just encompasses so much, and it's finally, I would say, like. Most people think kinesiology. What are you going to be, a personal trainer or a physical therapist, right? That's what they say, and it's like when you go into the field, it's actually like no, it goes into a lot. Ergonomics, athletic trainers, like all these different things that like people don't realize is part of their day to day.
Would it also include like methods of recovery as part of the kinesiology studies and overview, Joey? Out of curiosity,
I wouldn't necessarily say so. I think it just touches on that briefly because the main focus is just movement analysis.
Okay.
The study of body movement. So what that looks like. I mean, you're right. It's definitely new. And when you look at a lot of these studies or a lot of these influencers talk about how to program or how to make an appropriate program, a lot of that is now being based off of new studies coming out based off of the slight adjustments that you're making in how someone moves. So you mentioned, with the leg press, toes in, toes out, toes a little bit higher on the platform, a little bit lower. That completely changes the EMG data, and that's the only thing that's changed in that study is like the variable. So being able to do those things has been definitely beneficial for what physiological adaptation you want for the body.
If you were to hypothesize, then based on your n equals 1, where you've seen the best carryover into something, because I'm sure it has a little bit to do what you would want to do research in. All right, selfishly, I would do it that way. Like, what's the biggest thing that's giving you the most bang for your buck that most people like kind of go, F that? Like, not really. No.
The most bang for my buck? Are you talking about a movement?
Yeah, like a movement. Like, when people be like, again, like maybe it's like foot placement differences or things that are like kind of like your go-to. I have one in my mind right now that's pretty money, so I'll go to it after you give me something. It's like a little setup difference, I swear.
Maybe you start first, Marco, so he gets kind of
see.
like an example of like what you're thinking about.
Right. Okay. So most machines are designed right for like the average male archetype of like what 5'8" or average height and average weight, right? So like right, you're always playing with like positioning and setup of the machine to make the most sense, right? So one of the studies was like, hey, like put the seat all the way back on a leg extension. And then I was like, but I don't feel like I'm getting that full deep stretch, because you talked about that like stretch mediated long muscle length. So put like a little bit of like a foam pad between that and like my shin bone, just to give another like 2 inches, that little extra length in it. And I swear, like it like crushes the quads, and the activation is so much greater perceptively, right? And so like that's been the thing that like I don't do leg extensions another way anymore. Like it's always find the damn wedge to get that extra length.
That's a good one. I'm gonna have to steal that one, Marcos. Show me the setup. Send me a photo one day. For me lately, it's a closed chain movement, but it's been great. Is I like pull-ups, but I've had so many like wrestling issues, bicep tendinopathy, like rotator cuff stuff, AC joint instability. I like to do ring pull-ups because that hand placement, for some reason, just that mind muscle connection just kind of opens me up more. So I like the ring pull-ups because of just that rotational component. One, I'll give you sneak. I told this to Marcos, and it's out there in public, but Flex Lewis showed this out, but he got it from his wife, but it's a chest fly variation, too. I've never felt my muscle fibers on the upper pecs really work before. I told this to Marcos. Just lean forward as much as you can, so like a 45 degree, and then do the seated chest fly, and he's basically saying it's like an arc fly, like an overhead. It's almost like an overhead fly, but for me, I don't feel the delts. I feel the upper pec shelf. So that's a little cheat too. So I gave you two. Marcos gave a good one too.
Yeah, those are both good. Yeah, movement, that's tough. I would say one movement. I'll first reflect on what you both said. You're right about the leg extension. That's pretty good. Honestly, it's kind of funny. We actually started using that in Santa Monica because the pads on our leg extension machine were just becoming too flat, and it was just too painful on your shins. So we started implementing that. We started putting the foam pad on top of it, and they were like, "Hey, this is actually a better stretch." So we just kind of like trial and error, like, "Hey, this is good."
Yeah.
But you're right. And then Seamus, I do like the idea of just being able to free up your wrists. I think that oftentimes is the main reason why you feel pain in certain joints that are supposed to be a little bit stable, is because you don't have that opportunity to move your arms or move your wrists a little bit in their more natural movement pattern. But if I was going to choose a movement, that's tough. There's a lot of movements out there. I think it's going to be honestly a simple plyometric, just a vertical jump or a broad jump.
Okay.
I'm more on the lines that I think we're talking about this before or you guys were talking about this before we actually started this video. I'm definitely right now on this train of really hyper fixating on plyometrics and what power does for your longevity. I would have to pull up this study, but I remember when I came across this a year ago, they kind of they compiled a bunch of individuals a little bit older and assessed their progress over the years. Unfortunately, due to the subjects being a little bit older during this time, there are a lot of them that passed away throughout the study. But what they have found that has been a common variable amongst all of them is that those that were at the end of their life, they were the ones that actually could not perform a single jump. So they theoretically hypothesize, or they summarize, that it is possible that once you lose your ability to produce power, you have about 5 to 10 years left, based on the subjects that were within that study. So it's definitely something that allows you to generate a little bit more power, is something that I would
How did they test that? Because this is okay. How much to say? But like I've been picking apart some testing that I want to do for like the longevity purposes and like into those older groups. How do you test that with older group? Like how do you determine power output? Because some people, like you said, like, hey, let's go do a jump, whether that be a vertical or a broad jump, and then like it's just a test, but next thing you know, they're dying on the floor from a rolled ankle or like a, like there's just too much, it's too crazy for them. How do they, what's the method there to set that up, or how would you think about it like that to get someone tested on that, even if they're deconditioned? Like how can you set someone up for a power test?
I think you could use some form of velocity, some form of speed. So you can do something as simple as getting a leg press and doing 30% of that, and navigating the speed it takes them to do 1 rep and using that as your metric. You can just use a jump, broad jump, etc. Or, of course, with plyometrics, we learned this in NSCA, so CSCS, you can utilize some form of single leg balance testing to, of course, it's correlated. Doesn't mean it's causation, but it's just correlated amongst each other, and use that as your baseline number if they cannot perform a single jump. It just may mean that they just do not have power. So,
Yeah.
And then just regressing that even further and just going for strength metrics would be
Yeah.
your best marker.
That's a good one. I mean, that power output. Go ahead, Marcos.
No, that sounds like, because I visualized that because you mentioned like 30% of the leg press. Like imagine someone like literally quote unquote throwing, like a throw with your legs, right? Because that's kind of what a jump would be, right? But like a machine that would then like catch it on like the come down, right?
Yes.
Like, but I don't know if something like that exists, because then you're like, oh, the force and the speed that it generated, there's no risk of having like recatch the thing, makes it pretty safe. And I don't know. That sounds interesting. Like that immediately popped in my head. It's like, oh, someone fabricated that. If not, find an engineer that can do that for us.
I think I've seen some stuff on like German technology kind of doing it. There's been a few variations. There's this like Smith machine style thing that will like they do a squat and they throw it up and then it pauses at the top. But I mean, it sounds like like that. And then I've used some similar things in like when I was doing strength and conditioning in like some rooms where like it's almost like a squat, not a squat, but like a leg press or like a hack squat style, and they do some plyometrics on it, but it's like at an angle. But I don't know if it pauses. But dude, that sounds really good. Like what's a safe and reliable way to create this test without it being necessarily for the sports performance, for that geriatric longevity component, right, Joey? So like, I think that's a great question. That's a great one right there.
Yeah, that is a great question.
Makes me think of like, sorry, Jerry. It makes me think about like for older population people, does something like a trampoline and training on a trampoline to like get jumping into your protocol like actually make a ton of sense? Like literally like a kid's play place, right, where they're just bouncing around. But I mean, come to think of it, I don't know if I saw anybody over the age of 65 heading out there and just doing some jumps on that,
No. And, when I came across the study, I talked to the coaches about it, and we're thinking about all of our older clients, and they were like, hey, we're gonna tell them today, we're just gonna see what your jump looks like, but then if they are not able to jump, we'll just withhold some information about what that means. We're like, all right, cool, let's see what your jump looks like. And then we started I think after that, we started navigating a little bit more into how we can start implementing that as a performance metric, because that's something that we can control in real time as a personal trainer. I know with, we live in a PN, online coaches, you kind of just recap or leverage like all the things you've done. The reason why you have those coaching calls is to be able to talk about the wins, the areas of opportunities. And it's often hard to control the controllables because you are leaning on their autonomy. But in person, the actual performance of certain things we can control because we are there in real time. We're like, cool, this is what we're measuring, and then we're going to identify how we can improve from here.
I have an idea. I think we could do it too. I like that one, Joey. Like, is like a triple extension or even like a quadruple extension, just kind of like just getting a VBT and seeing how fast they can squat and get onto their toes without jumping. Getting like a VBT device, like a push or like a tendo unit or something like that. But that could probably be, and you could see how fast we're on the strength curve or the speed curve that they're at. They're like, okay, you're here. We'd have to find like there isn't enough data. Like, you need to do this study, Joey.
It's definitely that's definitely not my expertise either. I haven't really looked into longer duration studies. Obviously, that costs a lot of money, as well as what it looks like to, I guess, also from a actual testing standpoint, how viable it is to test older populations, because power movements tend to be a little bit more injury prone. But you're right. I think it's just an interesting thought to look into as far as, us being coaches. We often look at strength being the indicator of our longevity and health span, but then we forget before we lose strength, we have to lose power. So there's this natural progression that happens before you actually start losing the strength, which is the indicator for your loss of muscle mass. So
yeah.
What about, you said triple extension, Seamus, and I immediately thought of like throwing a lightweight like Dynamax med ball like behind you within the triple extension, because obviously there's carryover into like the clean and the jump, and you could have it standardized to like 8 and 5 pounds, something like super light, and then go by distance, from one to another, kind of like the broad jump, but like there's no jumping, so to speak, but like, being able to achieve a distance of 10 feet with, and then creating standardization curves relative to the age. I mean, there's probably so many ways to do it, but like, I don't know why that one, like, again, jumped in my head. That's like CrossFit background coming into like,
Well, that's the cool thing too about that Dynamax, like back throw and stuff like that too. With that triple extension, you're looking at hip extension. One of the components of longevity is people lose hip extension qualities, right? Because again, it's so kyphotic or sitting down all the time. So getting that hip, that's a good diagnostic tool as well. Like looking at that hip like movement as well.
Maybe we should do some research, Seamus.
I'm gonna set this. Let's put it aside here. I might have to put it aside. No, I love it. I mean, talking about this longevity stuff, Joey. Moving along into the Equinox stuff. I do want to kind of touch base on this, and again, the reason I loved your background. Love talking about that. I think we talk about that all day. I mean, the studies, and you still have to push your studies out, anyways. And good luck to you there as a candidacy and all that. I did want to talk about this new $40,000 Equinox membership called Optimized by Equinox. I know, look, you're running the show at Equinox over there here in SoCal. This is a worldwide, global kind of thing that they're doing, or like nationwide. What have you heard so far of the Optimized by Equinox and all that? And I got a few things here as well, just to kind of do all that. Yeah, what have you been hearing so far of like what the team or anyone's been telling you about it?
All great things. I think it just matches our brand here at Equinox. The price tag is, of course, is one of those eye-opening things that you see on media that grabs your attention. And oftentimes, for those that are not in the space of what would be considered luxury services, it seems like a high price tag. But I would often say, I think, speaking with those that are not familiar with Equinox or the brand of Equinox, it's hard to imagine a lot of people interested in something like this. However, there is a lot of interest in this program. Of course, we're just piloting it with a couple of clubs to start, to get the ground running. It's more like, trial and error, identifying what's going to work and how we can navigate the volume of people that are navigating this program, because you actually have a bigger team, which is something that we needed. And as we get past the pandemic and start to rebuild what we want, which is to provide the best possible service to maximize someone's life, this is just the next step in the right direction. But I haven't heard anything negative about it. There's a lot of for those that are within the market or those that are within those clubs that are able to leverage it, they had an amazing response rate, as far as upwards of 200 individuals that are ready to jump on this and start this new process in their journey, and then go from there.
That's crazy.
Well, I think it makes a ton of sense though, Seamus, because obviously as quote competitors with Synergenics, having the people already vested and coming into the personal training studio in a sense, right? Already means that you're going to have a level of outcome that is potentially a little bit superior in a sense, because you actually have the physical location to get the training done, right? And then using those biomarkers and those testing procedures to truly get the hands-on stuff, as we do it remotely. I'm sure our clinical outcomes could look immensely better if we were the ones actually facilitating the workouts with with our patients. So
Yeah.
I mean,
And here's a little detail
sense.
on it too, just to make sure the listeners, like, just to give, what do we get for that $40,000? That's the question, right? So Optimize gives users access to Function's panel of blood tests, over 100 blood tests, and Function is one of Mark Hyman's companies. So Mark Hyman is a big name in the longevity nutrition space, as most people have known him as a brand. An Equinox membership, obviously from $3,000 to $6,000 per year. An Aura Smart Ring, which is great for understanding sleep, HRV.
And wait, Seamus, one thing I want to add there to the Aura Ring. Did you know that they just came out with a feature where it can give you like estimated VO2 max with the Aura Ring data, and then a few other things that it's tailored just from like that ring data.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool. Really great.
So
and then most of the cost comes from 16 hours a month of one-on-one coaching that consists of 3 weekly personal training sessions, 2 30-minute meetings per month with both a sleep coach and nutritionist, and a monthly massage. And that's like the action plan. So you do all this testing, right? And it comes with all those assessments of like the strength and conditioning assessments, movement assessments, and all that. And then the coaching component. So obviously the 3 personal training sessions per week. And then the bread and butter, Joe, we've been talking about, the 2 30-minute sessions per month with a sleep coach and a nutritionist. And it sounds like the sleep coach and nutritionist kind of sharing our background, but it's from Precision Nutrition, right? Yeah, Equinox primarily, from what primarily gets people from PN level 1, level 2, and sleep, stress, and recovery specialists, right?
Yes, I would say, well, Optimize, I'll actually, it's a little bit different in that our coaches do get that additional training that we get from PNL1 and PNL2. When it comes to the Optimize, Equinox is actually hiring registered dietitians to facilitate that 30-minute coaching conversation. The sleep coaches will be its own separate category where they are hiring professionals in the space of what is probably newer, the field of sleeping, or developing better sleeping habits. So these are additional things that they have added into the arsenal to be able to bring a better, fulfilling team to support the 1 to hundreds of individuals that go through this program. The TRX coach is the individual that has developed the skills that encompass both PNL1 and PNL2, and of course the additional in-house education that Equinox does provide. I don't know if you're familiar with TRX, or we call them Coach X. They are our highest tier of coaching here, and then they just go through a more intensive program to get to where they're at. There's actually an interview process to be able to be a coach at that level, and then you go through, it actually lasts for at least a year to 2 years of additional education to be classified at that tier. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Does the so you mentioned dietitian, is this like a dietitian that's also more like certified sport specialist nutrition, or whatever that like acronym is? I think there's one in that. Is it like more geared towards that, or is it purely like a normal dietetics person, out of curiosity?
That's a good question. I wouldn't know exactly. All I know is a registered dietitian would be their main point of contact with regards to the nutrition standpoint. Okay. Yeah, it's essentially just trying to create this ecosystem to where
it's all in-house.
All in-house.
It makes sense. And I mean, I feel like every gym kind of does that to a degree. Definitely big in CrossFit gyms. Like, hey, you shouldn't outsource it when you can just do it inside, and you have all these people that are vested and have a vested interest, and it might only be 150 members. I know Equinox is probably way more than that, but you know, if 10% of people are interested of the nutrition, services, like it's 15 people, that can really be helped, and you get the, FaceTime, which again, I think in like you mentioned, coming into the world post pandemic, but I feel like a lot of people prefer the FaceTime. I mean, this is great. Like Riverside's cool because we can, do these kind of wherever with people all over the place, but like nothing replaces like that in-person connection and having the conversation, because there's a lag, there's this, there's that, so be in there and just like with the person is like, I don't know. Again, I'd pay more personally.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think there's a lot that can be communicated non-verbally that we get opportunity to be able to catch on when we're in person with whoever we're with.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it's so different when you take a client call on a phone versus Zoom versus in person. The language, the body language, those
Hmm.
nonverbal cues are significantly helpful, like in coaching and understanding. Like, did something land wrong? Did I say something like you maybe didn't intend for it? You were actually
Hmm.
being encouraging, and they took it as like something just dejecting them. And I'm like, I mean, I was supposed to be a pat on the back, but you're taking it like shit is bad. So that's
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. But Joey, for you, I mean, this is a great new turn of the field for Equinox and everything like that. I think this is I'm gonna turn the conversation a bit more philosophical. All right, Marcos does this to me all the time, so I gotta do it to someone for a second. I'm gonna use Marcos's question here that he said to me right before you came on camera. But how do we sell longevity if no one has lived forever? Yeah, how would you say that?
That's a good question. Mm,
It's like, let me put my sales cap on real quick.
yeah, I think I guess I use my own personal experience whenever I'm talking to our members or let's say a potential client, whatever it may be. Um, a lot can happen by just doing the action, and that in of itself allowing that to transcend and impact every other aspect of your overall wellness. So um, I know for myself, and I may have learned this and have adopted this and held true to this ever since I left for the military, but the physical does promote the mental, where if you just start moving, all the other capacities or components of wellness start to follow. And that's the reason why I kind of fell into this space, because when I started to improve my physical health, every other aspect of my wellness improved without even thinking about it. There's a lot that happen when you just start moving or just acting than just sitting in
Mm-hmm.
that motion. But when it comes to longevity, it really comes down to the quality of life that you want to have for the length of your life. I think you may have brought this up a little bit. I may have caught this a little bit, but um, why someone wouldn't want to live forever. I don't know if you guys have watched the series The Good Life, I believe it's called.
Oh, is that the
A
one
Good
where they're
Life,
in
The Good Life.
heaven? Is that like, or
Yes.
okay? I've seen like a couple episodes in the first season, but kids get in the way.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. It's like a different philosophical approach or understanding of what it looks like after we pass. But a lot of it, when it comes boils down to, I don't want to spoil a lot of it for you guys, but a lot of it comes down to is the ability to continue learning, being the purpose of the reason why you get to enjoy life. The reason why it would be very difficult to live forever is because at some point there's not going to be enough information to really learn, and that's when things start to stall. So when it comes to movement or longevity, this is a new process for a lot of people. I share this a lot with those that are not familiar with Equinox. When you go to a regular commercial gym, and it's a great thing because this allows them to get to use their passion for different aspects of their life. But for a lot of people in a commercial gym, let's say 24-hour fitness or LA Fitness, fitness is their life.
Yeah.
For a lot of individuals that do come into Equinox, fitness isn't their life. Their careers are life, their families are life. A lot of these are individuals are executives, presidents, whatever it may be. And fitness is what is allowing them to sustain that life. So being able to focus on those aspects of health so that they can perform at the level that they want to perform at, whether that be running their business or whether that be running this company, is going to be the reason why this is a huge opportunity for you to look into what longevity looks like. And at the end of the day, I think we talked about this, or I believe Mike, I forgot who mentioned this. I don't want to misquote anyone. At some point, and I'm sure you guys have heard this, at some point we pay for our health. It's a matter of when. So it's a matter of whether or not at 60, 70, 80, you realize, oh, I should have done these things before. Now I'm in the hospital racking up X amount of bills because I did not take care of this proactively before. So it's a matter of whether or not you want to do it now or later. And we're here to promote it now. Oftentimes we don't think about, because I like to think of, and of course this is just philosophically, but, and this actually may be based on science. I think that we have, just like how we think about genetic set points for body weight, we have a genetic set point for how long we live. So that's based off a lot of things. a lot of that is probably going to be genetic, but let's say the length of my life is going to be 100. So the goal of longevity is to meet or match our genetic set point, 100. Whether or not you get there is dependent upon the actions that you choose now. So it's not about surpassing it. It's just about meeting what you're genetically set to get to so that you can, one, get to what your body is going to be capable of getting to, but two, also being able to experience your youth for a lot longer.
Mm.
You go from
Yeah.
there.
I like
Yeah,
the genetics, loads the gun, behaviors pull the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's funny because as we were making those comments before we got started, let me just ask GPT-4o like what's going on. What would it encompass in that? And you kind of hit that. It's like genetics is like the number one thing. Fun statistic I just learned today. It's like one out of every 1,500 Japanese people live to 100 years old currently. 100. Like
Yes.
that's pretty wild.
good.
1,500. Like that's not terrible. I mean, from an age demographic standpoint, that's pretty wild. So that was it's like that's a huge genetic factor, but also too like again their lifestyle choices and their diet, their physical activity, their community, the harmful behaviors that they usually indulge in are probably completely different than us here in the like our Western culture, right? So I feel like you just said, genetics can load the gun, but pulling the trigger is like kind of solely based off of, again, like Joey, like you're saying, like kind of the human experience, and like you just don't you're not really guaranteed it. And I think, I mean, this is where the investing analogy works with everything. You need to start now. You should do a little something. $20 now could be whatever. What is that? The rule 72, right? Like if it's like 10% and you divide it or whatever, like that $20 today put into some account will be doubled in 7 years, right? At like a 10% interest rate. It's like, cool. Now I got $40 that I didn't have to work for. Like the reason why Seamus likes bringing up the philosophical stuff, I feel like because like I question him on those things, and he likes a lot of like stoicism. And
I do like that too, actually. So I resonate with it.
Yeah. And so I was listening to Chris Williamson's podcast, and he had this guy on there that talked about, man, actually I gotta pull his name up because he was a hoot to listen to, and I like highly recommend this, not only to
Craig Jones?
No, it wasn't Craig Jones. Hold on. It was Scott Galloway.
Galloway.
Yeah. So he's like a marketing guy, but the way that he viewed things, and his like his authenticity with like quote unquote his human experience with life. He's like, look, I like being philanthropic, but I also like getting noticed for being the one who is giving away the money. Like, and it feels good that I worked my ass off to be able to do it. So I want that fucking recognition, He's like, and he literally said that. I was like, at least he's real, right? Like
He's just real about it. Yeah.
He was just real about like, he's like, look, I'm going to go and work, I worked my tail off and created all these like scenarios to allow for better health and doing those things. And as we're talking about like this, again, Equinox is like, I can't even get into an Equinox in a guest pass unless I know somebody. Like I was in New York last week, and it's like every gym everywhere, Equinox. I was like, yeah, can't go to any of those because I know no one. Unless I could have dropped your name, Joey. This would have happened a week earlier. No, hey, I got a guy.
I'll get you in for sure.
But so then we're at a Crunch Fitness, and to talk about that experience, right? So Crunch it's a different demographic, right? And they're like, we're a results forward gym, right? And their result is like strength outcomes and things related to like body composition and things like that. And their price point is, I feel like it's $120 a month in like the New York City area, right? So, and that's to go to all their active facilities, right? And then I don't even know what Equinox's price point is in New York City, but I'm assuming probably $350, $400 per month, roughly, I'd imagine, right? But it's a different experience, right? Are you looking for the results forward type of thing, and you don't really need other things like that? Or do you have to pay that additional premium because, like you just said, you're this busy executive that wants to kind of guarantee that the machine should be open versus having to wait an extra 30 minutes, right? Like, like you're buying your time back in a sense with those different clubs, which to those people really freaking matters, especially if they care about like creating quote unquote what they view as optimized, right?
They want great equipment. They want a great, like I've been in Equinox before. I mean, first off, Freaking awesome. Love it.
I haven't.
You know,
I haven't been in.
you gotta go, Marcos. You gotta
I
taste
was
the
in the
soup.
Focus Club.
It's kind of like what they say. Like once you go first class, you'll never kind of go back. I haven't gone first class yet because I don't know if I can keep affording it.
Hey,
it's I don't know exactly, but like I've gone and I'm like, yeah, the equipment is clean, it's serene, it's elegant. The amenities are great, the bathrooms are great, and then yeah, you go back. Right now, I'm at a Fitness 19. You kind of go there and you're like, yeah, I need to get my way back to the. I need to find my way back in. You know.
Yeah, I would say, Seamus. Yeah, it's not a matter of if; it's a matter of when. You'll be flying first class soon. You know.
Yeah. You know what it is?
Hey.
I was told this the other day, but like it's convenience for me. The gym that we have is literally 20 seconds away from where we live here, and I'm like, you know, if I get up at 5 a.m., I just want to be there and then just train and get out. So just for me right now, it's convenience, but the next Equinox is like 10 minutes away, and one of our good buddies that we both know, Alina, she trains there and she got us in and she trained us a few times. So you know, so.
Man, yeah, I know. I got to tell this story, Joey. It's pretty hilarious. So I'm in Miami, and looking for a gym, and I'm in like, where are we? Coral Gables area, right? So I see that there's a Lifetime and an Equinox nearby. I was like, all right, cool. You know, I call Lifetime. They're like, yeah, guest pass is like $50 for the day. I'm like, $50 for one day? I was like, that's 5 months for my freaking EOS membership. Like, I'm like, oh no. And then I like was walking and I see that there's an Equinox inside of this, you know, like, it's kind of like, we have this place called Town Square here in Vegas where it's like shops, outdoor shopping, whatever. I walk into the Equinox and they give me that, like, yeah, like you're not on the list because you don't know somebody. And I was like, oh, you wouldn't even give me a price because I can't even like. They're like, no, that we don't do that here. I was like, oh my god. I was like, oh my Lanta. I was like, I walked all the way over here to eat dinner and try to figure out if I can work out tomorrow, and I'm not working out at all tomorrow because both these places, one won't let me in, the other's too expensive, and I'm just like, all I want to do is just get a lift in, you know. And that was my rude awakening that I was back over at the LA Fitness over, you know, the other direction, further north versus further south, you know, near whatever South Beach in Miami area. And yeah, so yeah, Seamus, that's you know, it's like, man, come on guys, let me in for a day. I would have paid it. I was right there, you know, but no, you got to know someone. So Joey, I'm gonna drop your name next time for sure. I'm gonna be like, hey,
I got you. They just didn't know who you were yet, so I'll explain it to them.
Now they know. Now they know.
I'm a nobody, but I just wanted to see, because I like seeing, you know, as a fitness enthusiast, right? Like I like seeing how different amenities are set up. You know, I know I've never experienced that one versus Lifetime. You know, we have our athletic club here in Vegas, LVAC, and like then you have EOS, and you have like all these different things, like how people, you know, how these spaces have changed over time, right? Like to accommodate like the newer things, and like you were mentioning before, it's like a lot of things have more kind of like functional utility to it. There is definitely like there's always a sled area in a lot of gyms now. They're devoting a lot of space to like create more movement, right? And not just that stationary equipment, which I find, like, again, maybe CrossFit had a big role in that, and then commercial gyms are like, hey, we could just throw some space here. Maybe we don't need as many ellipticals and treadmills in there. So I really, and CrossFit's taught me, they're like, hey, like try to drop in as many places and get a different experience as possible. And so I was like, dang, you know. So as soon as, like I said, as soon as I was in New York, I see everywhere is an Equinox on every corner, and I was like, nope.
Especially in Manhattan.
Oh yeah,
I'm the same.
Yeah, you're like, the good thing I work here, because I got a place I know I can go to everywhere if I'm making these trips. And you know, for our company, we're positioned in big cities, which tend to have these things. So, but there isn't one in Vegas, I don't think. Actually, maybe
yes.
Is there?
Slowly but surely, it's moving away. It's moving away south, moving away north, and then east. So you'll see one most likely sooner than later, but it'll be good. I think that's just the growth, the expansion of Equinox. But you're right. I think I would say, honestly, I didn't know about Equinox until coming across that coach that walked out of Huntington Beach when my wife and I were getting coffee. You know, when things started opening up. So I was not familiar until I got there. And honestly, you're not alone. Even coaches get barred from different clubs because you need to ask for access before you get there. So
you need to know someone. It's literally like Vegas nightlife all over again, which I've never been a part of, Joey.
Dude, that exclusivity, man, makes me want to get in more. No, you need to know my name. Joey, for you, just because we're kind of finished up on the hour, what are maybe some things that are exciting you? Not necessarily part of the Equinox. I mean, there's a lot of exciting stuff. Maybe just for yourself personally. I know you've got your baby. Anything exciting you as times move forward this upcoming year? Anything?
No, of course. And off with the Equinox thing, I think there's just a lot of growth happening. To be piloting something that's called personal run coaching, where we have specific individuals focused on the sport of running. So it'd be cool to have Equinox venture into specifics. When we think about, you mentioned earlier, Marcos, about something that's really sports specific. And then go through that. So start to tailor to those that are not just general pop, but that have athletic backgrounds. So it'd be pretty cool. As far as myself, I think I'm just riding this wave. We just moved out here to Huntington Beach. We just had our newborn, Kai, who is now 6 months. So I've already contacted a few places to start swimming classes, just do some parent and me things, get them moving, get that, I would say sorry but not sorry, but start aerobic development a little bit earlier.
Hey, that aerobic capacity.
Yeah, but I also learned that as far as being a coach, I've been coaching for a little bit of time. It started when I was in the military. When I got out, I started doing high school and collegiate, and then pandemic made a shift in my career, and now I'm at Equinox. I've really learned that your confidence in your abilities is the reason why you do or do not do certain things. So that's the way that I look at potentially introducing him to different movements, such as swimming and hopefully gymnastics, whatever it may be, is because it allows you to enjoy life in those capacities. I'm sure you guys have come across this research article about why. It's more qualitative, so I did a little bit more interviews and they coded just to create some reliability in it. But the reason why individuals don't like hiking is not because they just don't like the outdoors. They just don't like hiking because they don't think they could walk that far. So it comes down to their ability. It doesn't come down to their distaste for the forest or the things that are out there, the sun, whatever it may be. It has more to do with their ability to do those things. So I have realized that as a coach. You hear it all the time. When I was a coach, so when I wasn't managing and I was building my business, because a lot of that has to come from me meeting people on the floor, was having conversations with those on the treadmill and asking them what they plan on doing for the day. And oftentimes they mentioned, oh, I would love to be on the strength floor. I am intimidated by it. That's it. Had nothing to do with their want, like their lack of want or need for it. They just felt uncomfortable. So tip for any of you personal trainers out there that work in a commercial gym setting, what I would do is I would get on the treadmill, just turn it up a couple notches, turn it down a couple notches, and then mouth the words like, oh, it works. And then I'll just go to the next treadmill and like, all right, let me see if this works too. And I'll keep going down the treadmills until I bumped into someone. And then they'll take out their headphones and be like, oh, I just want to make sure your treadmill works. And then I'll ask them what they're doing for the day. And then that just introduces a conversation of what they may be or may not be doing on the floor. So if you're out there trying to lift for clients, it's a nice, easy segue. But, for me, that's just been my focus. He's 6 months. Hopefully be a little bit more present. It's definitely took a toll on the things that I want. You truly have to be selfish. I shared this with the coaches when he was first born. I really truly understood that there's a different level of patience that comes with having a kid. Just like I was humbled when I first got to Equinox, I was like, oh man, I've done work at the collegiate setting. I know my things. And then when I first stepped into an Equinox club and started to meet these individuals, I was like, man, out of the 18 coaches here, I am definitely at the bottom 5. It was a very humbling but much needed experience, similar to this. Not that I was underestimating the amount of patience required, but it definitely grew a different level of respect that I have for those that have kids. So navigating that patience is going to be huge. But trying to do all that while, of course, continuing to grow and foster, because it's an ongoing journey, but continue to grow and foster my relationship with my wife, as well as trying to do the side things such as the PhD and all that. But Yeah.
Oh man, you got your hands full, and yeah, just wait till you get to the cruising phase, and then the walking, and then the talking, and then you're out of diapers, and then you're into this next thing, and dude, it goes by so freaking fast. So like, those little moments of like the dad and son bonding with swimming and things like that. Like right now, my son's home from school, right? It's summer break, and it kills me that like a lot of the things that I can't do because of like work commitments, and he's like sitting there with me, and like, are we gonna go swim? He's like, oh, no, I gotta go take care of this, today. And I mean, to be honest, work was never really intended to have your family at home with you as you're doing it. You're supposed to like kind of disassociate the two. And like, I definitely feel like your head's like in the same spot as me. It's like, I really want to, maximize the true quality time, because time that is, time that is just there with him and just existing, and it's not quality. It's helping develop those things that I'm like, man, like, what does he want to do? What's his interests, and the biggest thing, and Seamus knows this, like, I got him into jiu-jitsu for a little bit, and he enjoyed it for like the first 2 months. He's like, I'm kind of over it. I don't want to do anything. And I was like, oh, damn. And I was like, you were really pretty good at it, though. And he's like, yeah, we can maybe go back to it later. I was like, all right, cool. What about soccer? He's like, I don't want to go to soccer practice. I don't want to do anything. And then literally, I don't know what changed from like literally turning 6 years old. He was really engaged in playing some video games, which, by the way, like, he'll pwn you in like mobile versions of any freaking like first person shooter as a 6-year-old.
I love when I spend time with your kid Marcos. I'll just be like, let me show you this. Let me show you this. And just like playing on his iPad, like.
But it's kind of crazy to see how talented like you can be on a smaller device. I'm like, oh my god.
I know. I'm like, dude, the frame rate's moving too quick. I can't even focus. How are you doing this? He's like, you see the guy right there? Boom, just sniped him. I'm like, whoa, okay. And so I'm like, all right, hand-eye coordination. But the craziest thing's been happening as we've just been trying to lean into helping him more. Not trying to be pushy, but just like, hey, we're gonna get you some like small group classes. We're gonna like try to get you a little better at soccer. He wants to go do that over the device stuff. So when a lot of people are like over here questioning their parenting tactics and using devices as like a babysitter, it's like, no. Like, I think if you continue to constantly have exposure and set limits and have boundaries with it, your kid will come to their senses and like want you to do it. But you like, as a father, I have to be like, fuck, it's hot right now. I really don't, it's like the last thing I want to do, but like I go do it. And it's like the most rewarding time, like kicking the ball around, working on his skills and drills. Hell, I get sore as hell. Like, you want to feel like you want to feel like you have no athleticism left. Do some lateral movement, and dude, you're about to embark on that, and it's happened so fast because I literally blinked. My daughter was 1 as we moved into this house. Now she's 3, kicking ass, taking names, and like, I'm like, yo, she can kick left and right footed. She can throw a ball. Like, where is she learning all this? It's like, I'm like, the days are long, but the years are short. So
yeah,
it's crazy.
That quote, I remember hearing that when we first had him. I was like, yeah, that means a lot. Actually, it's kind of funny you mentioned about the perception of time. One of our directors came in to Huntington Beach, and we talked the other week, and we're talking about kids because he was just very interested in how Kai's doing, etc. And he talked about how you remember when you grew up and you had your aunts and uncles just be like, man, you grew so much, and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have not grown. But then now being adults, we can see it, where it's like, oh man, like I just dropped off my kid. Like he was saying, I just dropped off my kid for her first day of school, and now she's about to start summer school. It's crazy how time flies, and goes from one day out to the next. But you're right.
Do you have 2 kids?
No, just one.
No,
I'm talking
just
about
the one.
Yeah.
Okay. His kid. Yeah. Gotcha. I was like, oh, you got 2. So you already gone through this, man. You're over here telling me like, oh, my 6-month-old. I was like, you didn't mention the older one.
No. Yeah, it'll be a good learning experience. I've there's theories on this about why our brain shuts off at a certain time, and they, I'm sure you guys have come across this, where there's this area in the brain that lights up when we learn new information, and once that starts to dull, that is once the brain starts to inevitably, it's a feedback loop, tells itself like we have no other purpose of continuing the process of neural networking our brain to learn new information. So there's this thought that there's possibly a possibility to increase your longevity by continuing to learn. So like this is going to be one of those things that allow me to just truly learn. I'll share this with Mark, the one that talked to me about the kids. My hope is that this allows me to feel young again, just because it allows me to learn more things when things start to plateau as we get older. So I'm definitely excited.
Dude, it's so surreal you mentioned that. And I think the biggest thing here that a lot of parents don't look forward to is redoing the homework from when you were a kid and you didn't care about it as an adult, because you have a new, like you just said, it's like that time between, oh, you grew like crazy. Like, God, I feel like I just saw you and now you're 6 inches taller. But going back and relearning a lot of those things that maybe you took for granted, or you just kind of, pump and dumped it, as like information that you don't really need, is actually kind of been one of the things that has been part of like that same thing. It like opened my brain back up to those things and makes me kind of feel really happy. I posted this on my story saying, am I the only parent that's looking forward to like having to do homework with my kids, especially like trying to relearn math with like whatever algorithm they're teaching now? And everybody was like, I literally got like 15 comments on it and they're just like, you're crazy. And I was like, of course you would say that, you like effing nerd. And I'm like, yeah, of course I'm gonna say that. But like, think about it, you get to redo it without having a grade on it and try to understand things at a new level. It's a new learning experience, like you're just saying, but it's nothing new to you, but it's all new to you. And like, that's where so my degree's in math, Joey. So like, I always really appreciate when people are like, oh, math is so hard. And I was like, no, it's not. You just don't actually know math. You learned an algorithm. You want to learn, like, you want to learn how to create something in your own head that makes sense. And that honestly, like, you'll probably think about that. It's like, man, Marcos said, I'm going to relearn math and I'm going to like it even more because I'm going to have to do it in a completely different way. Because you're just going to be like, I had no idea I could do that. Like, point in case, like, how would you add 123 and 246 together?
Putting it on top of each other, or on the calculator nowadays.
Nowadays, okay. Well, if we were to do it in your head, 1, 2, 3, and then we'll just say 1, 2, 3 plus 4, 5, 6.
Just envision it being like 1, 2, 3 over 4, 5, 6, and then down the rows. Yes,
down the rows. Okay, so you're just straight down, like the way you were taught there.
Yes.
Have you ever thought about adding the hundreds place first?
No.
Why not?
I have yet to learn this new skill.
Well, okay, let's move a 2-digit multiplication here. Let's just say it's like 12 times 24. Right? You have the old school math, 4 times 2, 4 times 1, right? Carry over, do all that stuff, right? But you can break apart that bottom number into 20 and 4.
Yeah,
so you know how to quickly multiply 12 times 20. It's 240. You can hold that number in your head really quickly. And then you have 4 times, that is what, 48? So now 140 plus 48. Boom, right? But technically that's different than how you would do it normally, but it's like you just learned something kind of new. It's like, oh, I can break it apart into pieces. And that's like where the world, honestly, like relearning, it's like, again, it's like nutrition. It's like everything we've talked about today. What are we doing to enhance longevity? We're doing fundamental stuff incredibly well and constantly relearning it. And like you said, like not building this false dichotomy or like thinking we don't know enough about it, so we're not going to do it. Right. And that's why like there's a lot of parallels to like investing in health and math and health and so many things that like you just said, like constantly learning makes the zest for life like super exciting. So I hope a lot of people listening can take that and truly apply it. Cause I mean, I'm gonna say this here. Like, I feel like if I get into depressive states, like my wife has anxiety, I get like kind of depressed and things. It's when I'm not engaged enough in new things. There has to be something kind of turning those wheels and getting those gears turning, or else you're just living Groundhog Day every freaking day. You know, what's today? Today's upper body hypertrophy day, baby. Like, let's go. Like, I love it, but you need a little bit of a change up every now and again.
Yeah,
so,
we love the zest of life, the novelty, man.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I would say like philosophically, like this speaking, I think if you really want to slow down time, just start learning new things. When you start going through the mundane and just letting your habits take over, you already know. Every time we drive, we don't remember what happens from point.
I don't even know what happened, bro.
We just get in the car, like, it just happened. And then, like, if it's a commute, then it's an hour automatically. But if you choose to use that time to learn something new, it lasts forever.
They should probably listen to the macro pod with Joey on it. Probably one of the best episodes, you know? That hour drive. Talking about that hour, I mean, honestly, I feel like I just learned a lot there. And Joey, thanks so much for really breaking down like your career. Again, I totally blanked out on your military career. Thank you so much for your service, by the way.
Air Force.
Ooh,
branch.
Nice. Hey, I love it. I wanted to go into the Air Force at some point too, and too old now, but Hey, that's what this shirt. I'm actually wearing a shirt, so Joey or all the listeners,
Yeah,
if you
the ruck
see that,
up,
like
yep.
we did the ruck up thing, and that was when we did
Memorial
on
Day.
Memorial Day. So we did
Wow.
a 5K ruck. Most of us at Synergenics, we have a lot of veterans actually on our coaching staff, and so they're like, "Hey, will you do this with us?" I'm like, "An opportunity to do fitness and then also do something for charity? Absolutely!"
Yeah.
So I got this shirt yesterday, and Seamus knows like I only ever wear black t-shirts, but I was like, "Oh, a little drab green. Let's go."
I can't wait to wear mine, dude. Yours looks good, but I'm gonna wear mine. Joey, I wanna again be respectful. We're talking over an hour, and we all this. I know you got to get back to your kid and everything else.
Yes.
Where can people find you on the socials, anything like that, and anything? Any last words, my man?
If they're interested, I'm not really a social media person, but Joey Belizario is my IG handle for everything, but I only use IG. So if honestly, I'm all about providing as much information as possible. So if you have further questions, I'll give it away.
Yeah,
Because I
I'm
believe that
probably gonna have to run studies by you now. Like, hey, yo, what's the, hey, what do you think about this one? No, that one's dumb, Seamus. Don't even worry about it.
yeah, I feel like nowadays, most of the time I'm looking at research now is just trying to identify what's the weakness, what's the area of opportunity. So it's definitely good to get that. But yeah, I think as far as takeaways, I would say that I truly believe in ACSM's motto of exercise is medicine. It is just one of the most effective interventions that you can apply for yourself. It's one of those things that you get, very quickly a result right after you do it. So for a lot of people that are new to it, once you work out, you're going to feel sore the next day and you knew that it worked. So it's just a great way just to see the small wins. And although it takes time, just like we were talking about earlier, time flies. And, we don't want to look back and think like, oh, I could have been doing this just to enjoy that. So, yeah, that's about it. One of my favorite quotes is Ancado Amparo, still I am learning, which is why I'm in my doctor's degree. Continue to seek new things because, like I mentioned earlier, it may be the thing that slows time long enough for you to really enjoy your life. So that's about it.
Dang. Marcos, close us out, man. Too deep. This
Joey.
is too deep. I need to go. I got chills.
Dude, you gave us two clippable moments, which is perfect. Actually, I'm gonna tell that to our producer at the end here. Can you say that one more time? Was that Latin? The first part of it.
I would say I don't want to misquote. They say it's said from Michelangelo, but he may have stolen it from someone else. But he said this, I believe, when he was either 79 or 89, like towards the end of his life, that although he's had all these inventions and things that are his claim to fame, even at the end of it, he felt like there's still much more to learn. So I think it's definitely resonated with me. I learned it when I was in the military, and it's definitely opened up my eyes, and especially being in this doctorate program. I think the true switch from grad to post or grad to actual post or PhD is that affirmation that you truly don't know a lot. And that really humbles you and actually allows you to experience life in a different way.
So great, man. Yeah. So thank you again for your time, man. And everybody listening. I wanted to hear that again because I feel like that's been a true message that Joey brought forth here today, which is like really good. And in a moment when I actually need it, and Seamus and I always say it's serendipitous how we always get people on to tell us that we need to tell us things that we need to be hearing. Get out there, continue learning. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the content that we've been putting out. If you don't already, please subscribe to the channel. We really do appreciate it. We are pleasantly surprised at how our analytics have done over the last year and a half, and thank you for being a part of this journey. And if you look up here, maybe it's probably not going to be on my but right there, click and subscribe right there, hit like. Now, but yeah, we truly appreciate your guys' time listening to us. And Joey, thank you again. And then until next time, Macro Perspective is out.